Day 2 of the NBA draft is officially over, and the Sixers added another potential impact player, this time at the backup center position. The selection at the 41st overall pick was Adem Bona out of UCLA, a 6'8" big man with a 7'4" wingspan, and a really interesting story overall. He's a guy who work rate and effort will be the the two most common words that will be used to describe him. So I want to break down in this video a little bit of what to expect, what his role may be, as well as talk about how this impacts Paul Reed as it pertains to the Sixers. So I'm going to start out with a couple quick hitters, some breakdowns from the bigger NBA media members who followed him a little more in depth than myself. Start out with Jonathan Givony, who writes that there isn't a harder playing prospect in this draft than Adem Bona. His combination of mobility, length, power, quickness off his feet, and intensity gives him considerable defensive potential. He should be one of the first players off the board this afternoon. Luckily for the Sixers that he did stick around to that 41st pick where they did add him. And we got Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer speaking quite highly of that pick at the time. O'Connor tweets that Adem Bona will be the best backup in Joel Embiid's Sixers career. Pure energy and hustle. But Bona's versatility could also enable him to play with Joel Embiid for two big lineups. Embiid can space on offense. Bona can handle perimeter matchups on defense. And while I'm not as bullheaded that that's a possibility yet, I know we did talk quite in depth last year about the potential for these two big lineups with Paul Reed. I do think that it does say a little bit more about Paul Reed than it does about Nick Nurse for that not being a possibility. That does seem like something that I think Nurse would be open to if the situation does allow. And frankly, we know the rebounding issues that the Sixers team has had, that I do think there's room for another big body playing next to Joel Embiid, even if Paul Reed wasn't quite that guy, and even if Adem Bona isn't quite that guy. But the reality is that the number one goal or lane that he will run in is as the Sixers backup center. And to dive a little bit more into what he brings to the floor, I do want to dive into the full scouting report from KOC here. And he writes this on The Ringer. He was the 32nd ranked prospect, according to O'Connor. Says shades of Montrezl Harrell and Bismack Biyombo. He writes that Bona is a tireless player with the qualities to be an excellent rotational big. The pluses that he writes is that he's a big-bodied defender with the hands and feet to thrive in pick-and-roll scheme. He sets rock-solid screens and rolls hard to the basket. Active help defender who explodes like a rocket for emphatic highlight reel blocks. Shows a nose for crashing the offensive glass, and he's highly physical on the defensive boards. Quick and explosive leaper with good hands, he'll be a major lob threat, and he always runs the floor hard, so bigs will reward him. Shows a quick first step from the perimeter on occasional drives inside. There's a chance he will develop into a solid face-up game, especially if he's able to develop a jumper. The minus is he's borderline hackable as a free throw shooter with limited touch away from the restricted area. He's also not yet a player who can be trusted to facilitate from the perimeter, whether in dribble handoff actions or in transition. So I do think the free throw shooting was a little bit strong there. He did increase these numbers to 69.6% this year on over 4 attempts per game. If you're shooting 69% from the line as a big man, I can live with that. Obviously, the higher the better, but that's not something that I think throws him in the range of hack a Shaq or hack a Ben Simmons, in which you can absolutely throw a team off. And to be perfectly honest, if we're talking about the backup center and my biggest complaint is his free throw shooting, we're doing all right in the Sixers world there. Now, for Adem Bona here, he is a guy that you flip on the tape and he does pop, that he's off the charts athletic, off the charts work rate. He's running up and down the floor. He will have those highlight reel dunks. And when I kind of evaluate that, what does that mean to me? Is he's kind of Paul Reed 2.0, that it is a similar athleticism and work rate, and those are kind of Paul Reed's calling cards. Same with Adem Bona. And the interesting factor with Paul Reed here is the Sixers have a decision to make. That as of now, he's on a non-guaranteed contract for over $7 million, and as they look to shed as much salary as they possibly can and approach this free agency to attack and build a true contender, I do think it's pretty likely that Paul Reed is a casualty for that. Now, to preface it a little bit, I do think that Daryl Morey is working the phones right now, and that there is some appeal because it's a non-guaranteed contract that these Sixers could potentially trade out Paul Reed for like a future second-round pick. That team's able to cut Paul, get that salary off the cap directly right there, and it's a little bit of a win-win there. Wouldn't shock me if that's the route they go, and certainly would be preferential to the Sixers if you can get anything returned rather than straight up cut him. But I do think on a cost-controlled contract, a guy like Adem Bona is going to hold far more appeal to Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse than, unfortunately, Paul Reed. So it's been a good run, good couple of years, but I do think my expectation is we've probably seen the end of Paul Reed in a Sixers uniform. Maybe there is a world where if they do release him, they can renegotiate on a smaller figure, but I can't see the Sixers committing $7 million to Paul Reed at this point in time, and that's especially the case after drafting Adem Bona. Now, to talk a little bit more about Bona, he is a guy who has incredible character as well, that all coaches and players speak super highly of him about what he brings to the team, the work rate, the just positive vibe that he radiates. And I do think that's something the Sixers are paying more attention to. This has now been consistent with both Jared McCain and Adem Bona, that they are guys described as these hard workers that guys want to be around, some charisma that they each have, that people like them. And I do think that's important on a culture-wide standing, that far too often the Sixers have just looked at talent or haven't done quite the due diligence. When you continue to stack these good personalities or good vibes within an organization, that does add up. And Bona himself had a really cool quote following the draft when he was asked about things that I did want to pull up here. And Adem Bona, when asked about being drafted by the Sixers, said, quote, "I'm so excited to be there. Actually, my older brother is a Philly fan. He's really excited right now, probably. He's back home in Nigeria watching. I can't wait to be there, man. I'm also getting the opportunity to meet Joel Embiid." So cool quote there. I love to see the excitement from him. And cool that his family is fans of Philly already. Obviously, the better to get a little foot in and know the history there, I guess. And cool that we know that there's African descent for Adem Bona. He is from Nigeria officially. So I'm sure Joel Embiid is a bit of a cult hero over there down in Africa, particularly Joel being a bit of a trailblazer himself. I know there were guys like Luka Mbamute and a couple others before him, but Joel being able to ascend to the MVP levels that he has become, that's just straight up inspirational for a lot of the guys over there, and I think Bona falls under the category also. Now, I did want to dive a fuller picture of what he brings to the table from a statistical standpoint. So to pull up the stats of his 2 years at UCLA, as we can see this year, he's started all 33 games, played 26.5 minutes per game, produced 12.4 points, 5.9 rebounds, 1.2 assists, 1.1 steals, 1.8 blocks, which is a really high figure there, and doing all that in 26.5 minutes per game. And when you do zoom out and take a look at the 2-year sample size here, the free throw shooting is the most stout improvement that I do think is worth noting, that he shot 57.3% as a freshman, up to 69.6% as a sophomore. That is huge improvement and stuff that I do think is relevant. That again, if you're shooting really over 65% as a big man, you're pretty much going to be passable. There is a pretty high tolerance for that. And like when you're a player who has the ball in his hands, like a guard or a wing more often, there's just more opportunity for you to get fouled. For Bona, he's going to keep the game simple. That he's going to rim run, he's going to set screens, he's going to roll to the basket, and he's going to play in transition. And the only time he's really going to be fouled is when he's going up for a layup or dunk. That's really the only time that we're going to see that there. So not something that is a massive concern. So as far as expectations and what I'm thinking for Bona, he's going to keep the game very simple, that he's going to maximize the straight-up basic big man roles, that he's going to be a screener, he's going to be a shot blocker, he's going to be a lob catcher, and that right there is a pretty complete NBA player from the big man perspective. I will say I did get a little pushback from some UCLA fans on Twitter who did question a little bit of where is his high IQ, that sometimes I think he's a guy who falls in the category of overexerts himself too much, where he's trying to do too much, run all over the place, and kind of gets himself out of position. There may be a little bit of doubts about the IQ for where he is on the floor. I think he's probably not the most instinctual basketball player, but the raw athletic traits and his ability to block shots and catch lobs at a high level is what's going to keep him in the NBA for a long time. When you think about guys like Clint Capella, who straight up made a career out of just shot blocking and catching lobs, I think Bona can be that and a little more. That I do think there's more defensive versatility there. I saw a couple just clips and highlights. Again, I have not dove into this guy in the full scale. I certainly will before the season starts up. But I saw some opportunities in which he was switched out onto the perimeter and held his own at least. That 7'4" wingspan is going to be a real talking point as far as who he's able to match up with, and obviously that catch radius that comes with the lob there. So I think this is a great pick for the Sixers, a great use of assets by taking him with the 41st pick. I was pretty open about I would have been very frustrated if with that 16th pick, which once again was Jared McCain, if that was used in the big man spot, there was a lot of smoke connecting to Yves Missy out of Baylor there. I would have been frustrated by that. But in the second round there, I'm totally cool with it. That having a guy like Bona to at least come under the wing and see what he can be. At the worst, it's a move to challenge Paul Reed and see if he is ready to step it up this year. But I do think Bona can be a number one improvement. And I do think it's not the worst idea to even bring in another player to challenge there. So I do want to hear from you guys in the comments. What do you think of the Adem Bona addition? I am pretty excited. I think this is, I wouldn't give it an A+ move, but pretty satisfied. I'll throw another B+, which was my grade for McCain as well. I'm happy to have Adem Bona a part of the Sixers family. I do think that his work rate and his athleticism are going to be something that is pretty infectious in the city of Philadelphia. I do think he's going to be a fan favorite, and while he might not be Paul Reed from the standpoint of yelling out the mud and chirping, I think that this is going to be a guy that we learn his name pretty quickly. So shout out to Adem Bona and welcome to Philadelphia. Shout out to the Sixers for really nailing both rounds of the draft. I'm going to drop another video pretty soon after this talking about Justin Edwards, who's their undrafted free agent signing, and a guy that I've seen play in person, a guy who's a local Philly area guy, and a dude that was a former top 5 recruit that they managed to snag in the undrafted free agent market. So make sure to stay posted for that. And the best way to do that is by smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video here, and any comments you have for me. And I will be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.